global integration. The Russian payment market, I can't tell you anything new. It's one of the most advanced in the world, if not the most advanced. It's not always been the case until now. It's always been so. And as clients, we have gotten accustomed to its efficiency, to the speed of contactless payments. The business had gotten accustomed to this non-stop, continuous interaction with the client. Can we preserve all this? It's possible to make it better, to improve all this. What strategy is chosen by today's business in this new world, with a new horizon of planning that has changed substantially? And now this is what we are going to discuss today at the round table of global, it's called the Global Integration Round Table, New Payment Reality, and we put that question mark at the end of this name title, and we will be able, hopefully, to answer this question. Is it going to be global integration? And what do we understand by the word global? This round table is involving different representatives of different businesses, from restaurants to marketplaces to banks to payment systems to representatives of regulatory bodies. They are all united by the same experience, unique experience, aimed at efficient relation with these clients. Alla, Bakina, Department of Central Bank, Department of Digital Payment of Central Bank, Vladimir Komlev, COO of SBK, Anton, Pinskiy, businessman, restaurant owner, founder of the Sagrado holding, Vladimir Bakin, financial director of the Wildberries, Alvina, Surmach, executive director of the Evotor.PAY,
Alvina, Surmach, исполнительный директор Evotor.
And Kirill, Tsarev, first deputy chief of the president of the Sberbank of Russia. I'd like to suggest that we begin our session with the question to the regulatory body, Alan. What are the main trends now that form the payment reality in Russia, and which are likely to form them in the near future? Thank you for the question. And thank you for choosing our discussion, given that multitude of topics and aspects that are very interesting. Talking about your question, trends are many. I'd like to highlight three key ones that are very bright and challenging. For example, today is the first one. Despite the situation, current situation, the trust of clients to cashless payments is very high. This is an effect and developments of the previous years. Everything that has been invested into by the industry in the recent years, and cashless transfers have become part of our life. Now, in answering to your question, there's a multitude of trends. I'd like to highlight three key trends that are very bright and very challenging. For example, today, the first thing, despite the current situation, the trust of consumers towards cashless transfers is extremely high. This is undoubtedly an effect and developments of the previous years. Everything that has been invested into by the industries all the previous years, cashless transfers and payments have become part of our life. And as a result of the third quarters, the share of the cashless transfers, as like Elina Tikhonova has said in the previous panel, occupied 77.7%, almost 80%. Just imagine that figure, which is very rare in the world. Just there's a few countries where that have achieved such kind of results. In Russia, until last year and 2 years ago, some international consultants would call Russia the Russian miracle. Our banks were on the top of the leading acquiring international banks. Our proposals and offers of our banks were on top, what they offered the clients and the relations between the clients and banks. And this is what creates the basics, a very good foundation for further implementation of these new innovations. And this is the first trend. The second trend is on the part of clients, consumers, they still keep a demand for this contactless, instantaneous payments. No one wants to put something, to insert something, to log on long requisites and data. And people have gotten accustomed to this, and this is part of the top services, given that some international players have quit the Russian market. Partly our Russian banks and our payment systems are offering now contactless, cashless pay services. There's a lot of them. They are different, and I would say that they are competing each other with each other in a good, efficient way. It's a very good topic, and we should keep that trust of consumers high. And besides, you see that you all are following the news with your partners, with your competitors. You can treat them differently. What we have is bill acquiring is developing on the Metro. You can make your payments on the Metro. In some other platforms, this technology is also used, which is very interesting also. A very interesting fact. And on the background of the events that are going on, what we see is changing. The market structure of the market is changing. We need that demand for competition. We need strong players, innovative players. We should catch up with them. And in terms of this, non-banking players, and their role is getting stronger on the market. We see them as technological companies, and we have seen recently some separate companies. They have been formed at the level of the legislation basis. We have our own attitude to them, different aggregators. There's different service providers in this area, and including, I can remind you, part of the strategy of our national payment system, we have announced for the next 2 years, at least even less than 2 years, the end of 2022. This is a launching non-banking provider of payment services. And tomorrow there's going to be a section scheduled for tomorrow, quite interesting. And this is where we believe that it's non-banking providers of payment systems, the implementation of new hubs. These are the conditions that will enable to enhance the competition on the Russian market. And of course, this trend, this high level that is inherent of our Russian payment market, the demand of the customers towards that level is very important for us, extremely important, and it's very important to keep up with that trends. Talking about the Open Hub, it's very interesting. We will talk about it later in more detail. So, we've been told that we should achieve 100% technological sovereignty, covering all the industries. We are pretty much far from this. But technological sovereignty of the payment services, what proportion, what share would you assess this at? We should divide the technological sovereignty and the whole. It's not that bad, really, in Russia. But talking about it's about the same structure. We can look at them at the same angle as in other industries. If we talk about the programmed software for all the applications that are being developed, for example, all the Russian ratings speak for themselves, and they're pretty much independent, highly independent. The quality that has already been loaded here, and of course there are issues with the infrastructure, with the hardware, but I believe that we don't have any other way out. We can hope for parallel import and some other bypass solutions, round solutions, but without our own solutions we can't win the situation. This is what is important, to look for and find those solutions to those issues. We should use the solutions we used several years ago when we developed developing financial sector. And what we need is, we shouldn't go through this many year-long, 10-year-long global experience. We should take the best. We should borrow the best, together with our brains, together with our competencies. Our specialists are high-level specialists. It's a fact. We should make that leap forward. I want to say that these 3 7s and 7% of cashless transfers, this is a share of cashless payments in the retail industry, correct? I'd like to ask the other representatives here how your figures are relevant with these figures. Vladimir, how much the share has changed with the cashless and cash transfers? Because in the beginning of this year, everyone was telling us that everyone would go into the cash. If in the retail turnover, there's a share of cashless is 77% with us. In us, we have it about 100%. It was closed last year. It's been closed this year. Nothing has changed. All those turmoils haven't made any impact upon the services. And what we see here is the market that has shown high level of stability and endurance. Alvina, I'd like to give this question to you on your side. What changes in the share of cashless and cash transfers do you see? In fact, I would agree with Vladimir that on our Evotor base, we see that this has been absolutely stable. The situation is stable, and we compare September of this year. We have seen in Evotor the share of 67%. If we see last year, in September of last year, it was about 58%. On the whole, the market has been quite stable. Undoubtedly, there were some leaps forward in the beginning, early this year, and we observed them, that the market then had stabilized, and what the growth is quite forecastable. And it's about 100 billion rubles in October. If the market is getting normalized, is normalizing, is getting back to normality. This is just demonstrating the trend I have highlighted. This trust of customers towards cashless transfers is high, at a high level, and of course there are some events that make an impact of the seasonal changes or some kind of reactions to some situations that occur, but the situation is getting equalized and is getting forward. This is the facts. During the transformation we're talking about, we've been told, what about your relations with the payment system? What's happening with the payment solutions for the business? You as fintech representative, you're working with the banks. What do you want from the banks? Some banks might not give you completely something. I understand that 22 years, there's a year of challenges, a year of opportunities. If we talk about the challenges, that I think we understand that we have faced those challenges. We overcome. 100% of the cashless transfers have survived, and in doing that, talking about the opportunities, the thing is, things are not that good here. What we see here is we have our own opinion on the development of Pinskiy. It's not completely, it's not the time or coincide with what I've heard. We see that the level of servicing has kind of sagged somehow, perhaps because of what has happened. At the same time, some new opportunities have occurred. The business and banking community perhaps can't or does not want to implement. The banks up to now are holding on to those profits they receive from banking cards, and they're trying at maximum to arrange that technologically, and this stops them from further development, from further evolution. They should quit that. They should discharge that burden, that cargo, the burden, and we see pretty clearly that on the market, the mere pay has survived in the market. If there's something else, I'm ready to hear, to listen to. Mir.Pay, for example, is worked on the Android basis. Only payment cards match that, and the entire fintech, the entire banking community can't do anything about that. Doing that at first glance, the IT opportunities are available. Why it's not happening? This is a big question of mine to my colleagues. Let's give the floor to the colleagues to answer. Kirill, what is happening? Let's begin at the beginning. First, I'd like to make you happy. There's a new pay, Samsung Pay. Next week, we will see this Sberbank system back. We are getting back that Android system, the same which had existed and had been working until February. The time for applause. Why was it not accessible? This is what we started to talk about at the beginning of this discussion. It's about certain solutions. It was not our Russian soft all the time. We faced the problem that some of our foreign partners quit the territory of the Russian Federation or made their services inaccessible, and that it took us some time to make those services get back. And I'd like to thank our colleagues from the SPK, because all this has become able due to a joint effort made, so to say, because this departure of foreign payment systems and our new technologies over the half a year, we have come a long way, and this is where we should applaud. And the second thing, I'd like to make a short commentary to the beginning. We heard that banks were on top of the global inquiries. We have been on top. Sber is the third biggest number one in terms of acquiring in the world, and we're planning to stay there. That's why I think the question, why do you need those cards? What do you need the cards for? Because you belong to the top 3 in terms of acquiring. All the methods go there to the acquiring. Everything is summed up. NFC, and we can say that this is the issue of cards, banking cards, is a factor that is clear to all the clients, that has saved or helped save beginning from March. Apple Pay, for example, was switched off, turned off, and the Apple Pay is not accessible on the Russian territory. And the Apple Pay that is going to get back next week is accessible only on an Android basis. Given our developers, we have an Atasok MRC, we can implement these services. Getting back to the question of our colleague, Apple was closed. Until Apple is closed, these services are not accessible. We'll have another technology, QR, and you can use the QR with your telephone without a card on the Apple. We have 2 variants of QR. You can scan them. You can create the QR inside of the application. This is a method that can be used. Biometric method, another method. Today, it starts to getting developed, and together with this discussion today regarding the legal basis, is one of the methods that is going to be intensively developed and is widely used at a number of shops, a number of X5 shops, cafeterias in Moscow. You can pay by the biometric method without the card. Is there any demand on part of the business? Here's a question to you. Do you have any demands for the QRs and biometric systems? After this session, we will discuss that. We'll have a word with Kirill, because they are pioneers. We are not going to be a pioneer in some cafeterias. Here he said about some cafeterias, and we're going to use that in all the cafeterias, by the way. The biometrics, for example, we tested. We were one of the first ones, and that experiment was run very well. I'd like to highlight that the number of technologies, given that they are new, that they have not proven legally, of course, over one day or over 1 year, they can't launch the market. 100%. Your QR is accessible now. The thing is, when I was talking about cards, I was talking about yes, market, those infrastructure, card infrastructure. The banks can't quit. Of course, there's biometric methods and all those techniques, but at the same time, the question is kind of different. When we quit that infrastructure and start new technologies by adding biometric techniques and all those innovations and novelties that are being planned, Vladimir might help me. There's a number of several technologies. There's a number of technologies, BP, card technologies to SPK, where we can transfer payments without the card. It means that in different technologies have different levels of pricing on the markets for all the players, all the participants, for the clients, for the providers. There are no cashbacks for some clients. What is important here is to provide a kind of a picture, complete picture for all the players in the market and all those techniques that are most convenient to the market, for example, if you go somewhere to Europe, there's only acquiring. You can find those places in Europe. And now, technologically accessible are card technologies, the PZ. We can divide them into three parts: the conduit-based payments, internet-based payments. There's Yandex, Tikhonova, Sberbank, and you name them. And this is the internet payment system, acquiring system. Next step will be biometrics, and inside of those technologies, we are cooperating with the merchant, with the client, from the point of if it's necessary to pay cash to the client, by the client. I think those are some kind of business demands, requirements, business logic. It's business and restaurants on Friday. This kind of technology should be turned off in restaurants in the evening time. What I saw yesterday, they will start testing biometrics in the south, somewhere in the south, in the Caucasus. I remember we have already implemented some services on biometrics. I don't know if these guys are working with those hoods. I understand the Friday danger connected with Friday services, not only about those people, those who are working in balaclava and neck masks. What is interesting is the thesis. Why don't you invent something else rather than cards? Well, I should understand that the card is the last and the least fact of a moment in interaction between people and systems. But if we had everything, the standard of transfer of data, there's a rules, and all this is aiming at one particular thing, to be received everywhere equally, so that I could, with having my face, my telephone, my card, that I could go to any kind of point, and all this should work. And I think there's a priority here for the card systems. And so they started to form about 60 years ago, and this is what has formed, perhaps some kind of obsolete over the last years. ISO 8 of 1993, those are very heavy things. At the same time, they still work, they still exist, and they provide for this coherence that a person who has a card with the word Mir on it, he can go or she can go to any point, just put his or her face, or touch with his or her smartphone, telephone, and understand how he or she is paying. Of course, there are some other worlds for other systems who can penetrate onto the payment market with all the new technologies. Whatever innovations today, Yandex.Pay, for example, something else. What happens next? A person pays, and then it goes down one level below, and this is when the standard starts to work. Payment system like Mir, for example, they form, they make it unified, they provide for this coherence that, thanks God, cannot be seen by the customers. But without that thick layer, you as a payment system, you iterated over the last 60 years, get close to that. It took us 2 or 3 years to reach that level fully. Of course, we understood that what we were doing, but this was a very long run race and very heavy one. We can't say that it's gonna. I can't say that it's gonna work in a restricted number of places for a restricted number of customers. Yes, it's possible to do. It might be a very good product, but it might take a long time, some time to create this problem, that product which would unite all the layers, which is called a full-fledged payment system. The standard, the brand, rules, the rates, and all that. Why cards are so expensive? Because this is a business model that would lay down initially into these payment systems, and it's been growing over the last 20 years at very high tempos. Vladimir, let me support you, and I want to say a few words to support you. Kirill has said, and Vladimir has said something that is customary now in Russia to badmouth everything, to say that we are backward, that we are lagging behind, and this is part of our mentality. Everything should be free. Why you are not doing this and that? When we talking about ecological sovereignty, that we're very far away from it. At the same time, some colleagues keep saying that everything should be free. The biggest part of our population in Russia. Whatever we do, either we tend to believe that we either stall or we've gone awry. I own restaurants not only in Russia but in Turkey, in Spain also. I had a restaurant in Israel, and we are so much accustomed to use those online applications, Sber online, and so on and so forth, contactless payments. And with the service of dividing payments, online tips, for example, that for us it's become customary. And for me, when I set that task to my directors, to foreign directors in Turkey, for example, in Israel and in Spain, to implement that, they looked at me as a crazy man, as a madman, as a euphemism. Yeah, okay. Yes. Yeah. Some payments, some accounts might have been closed because of in Spain, because that account was blocked. It's kind of a eschatological discussion, argument, dispute. We are getting more and more involved in this kind of dispute now. We have another problem, a perfection improvement. The consumer, citizen, is not accustomed to loading. He or she is accustomed to criticizing. The problem is why? Because it's about development of this net banking, of all the payment system. By my experience, I can say, if you compare this to 3 countries, I can add Qatar, Raman, as another system for a restaurant. We have gone away from them, by the way. Let's fix it and say that everything is alright. We are super developed. And there's one more thing. If we talk about the Sberbank, quit Sberbank. Everything could have collapsed, but no, Kirill has been doing a great job. Mr. Visa, Lev Voronich has quit. Nothing has collapsed. There's Mir system, there's Tsarev system, and we're working somehow. We're carrying on. And talking about the Mir system. So I asked some colleagues in the beginning, talking about the system, about the percentage of the cashless transfers and payments, and I'm more street retailer, I'm more of a street retailer. We're at 83%. You said 77. We have 83% of them getting in February. Talking about the February when those events happened, we were waiting for this cash buzzword, and where I looked and I saw that the share of the Amir card was 2% last year, and this it occupies 22%. The people started to believe. in this system. Just a few words, a couple of words about the payment system, and a very good illustration, bright illustration to this. We shouldn't be taking Vladimir. For example, the Sberbank payment system was implemented even quicker, faster than the MIR system. It's a new example of the fact that it's not based upon some other old foundations. This is an example of very good, efficient innovations developers implemented in Russia. Talking about the tempo of growth, the system has been developing. Development of any payment system that involves those players, it's always about reaching the level benchmark that is preset as at a high level. At the same time, the market is restricted by the perimeter along which you are given the opportunity to develop. The system does not have any perimeter. It appeared as a deep water blue ocean. It's been developing and growing at the highest speed possible. Everything what I see here is everything is going on, is developing, is spurring along, and talking about the global demands, as I said, at the background of payments, all the payments have not been impacted. People have been using cards and paying with cards. At the same time, we should admit that the level of service has fallen due to these NFC payments, and we should look at the market, see how it develops, stimulate it, and so it could reach a level. And it's falling, you said. Okay, would you raise your hands, all those who go and pay an NFC and receive, enjoys that process? And all those who enjoyed that before, would you raise your hands? This is the answer to your question. Clear, and there's a lot of cards still with the cashback credit cards, and the market could not react. It's clear. And I'm not saying that the people are bad, that we can't do anything. We are the best people in the world. We are doing things that can be repeated, can be emulated. The Wildberries company, for example, has proven that. But you have made people vote. People here are using the most state-of-the-art systems. The voting is not correct. Raise those hands, all those hands who are you're using iPhones. I am not lucky here a little bit. Anton is a very talented person, and he is able to answer instead of his interlocutor. Anton believes that Wildberries is asking for a zero rate. He can read the thoughts of other people. And I will go and talk about setting zero right now, today. Can I make comments, my own comments on something? The first thing. Now, we mentioned online and offline here in this discussion. What is important here, we should keep in mind that the offline, there's another production cost. There are terminals, MTIs, and what is biometrics on the offline network is when it's necessary to have a terminal and a camera that would that was able to recognize people faces, and which is important for the banks and not only for the banks. Anton is a very talented person. He can answer for his interlocutors. If we have these acquiring rates at zero, Anton believes that Wildberries is asking for a zero rate. He is absolutely sure of this. He is a very talented one. He can read other people's thoughts. Beginning from today, I will go and agree to talk about having zero rate. Kirill, it won't go. It can hardly happen. Let me comment on something. The first thing is that today it's part of our discussion. We have mentioned online about online and offline payments, and offline. We have another cost reduction. There are terminals. There's a technology that needs to be implemented. We're talking about the biometrics. What is biometrics in offline network, online? In addition to the terminal, a camera is required that they could recognize biometrics. And this is a challenge not only to the banks and trade networks, and it's a challenge to the producers, manufacturers, because some apparatus, some equipment, cheap equipment needs to be manufactured and pay for it. There's a nuance talking about 3/7s. There are some European countries that much earlier than we did started to use the banking system. Those who don't have those 3/7s, at the same time they have to provide very low rates. Why are we seeing in Russia that share of cashless going up? Because there's a very big stimulus to the clients for spending by cards, for payments by cards. What is it? We are stimulating, all of us, the clients to go into cashless. It's a very big task, a challenge, challenging regulatory bodies. Sberbank, we're implementing this actively in the transport. There's a number of industries inside of the country that have that cash portion quite high, and in order to have those clients go into cashless, we need to run additional cash back. So we have to do that. All that we will see that by implementing the MIR system. We're all doing all this. There's no free miracle. There are 3/7s, 3/8s. We need certain budget to stimulate the clients to go into the cashless transfers. And talking about the requests and our polls we have run, there's a technologically important trend now. There are two platforms, telephone platform, Android platforms in Russia have slightly different prospects of development, because its restrictions on Android are less than on iOS, and those services, and not only about banking services. iOS perhaps might see them developing slower, and it's important that that part of the clients will start changing. Please raise all your hands, those who are ready to change replace Android for iOS, iPhones. Some services are not accessible by those companies, and so on. There's a problem. And I would have 50 and 20 services like that. It's not easy at the same time. It's possible. Kirill, thank you for what you have said about the payment and transport. I know that we have some ideas. You have some ideas in this area. I'd like to hear your opinion on payment services for businesses. How do you see them on your side? You know, in fact, taking the example of our platform, we have faced a problem. Today we have already heard about it in another plenary session. The open up system. And this is what we should go to, the unique channel system. It's a top factor, one of the top factors for developing the services. And as an example, taking our company as an example, we're facing these periodically when an issue raises about integration with different partners. And there's an interesting and positive successful case or cases in the market. For example, our Sberbank colleagues of such integration in ecosystems. And I think that this experience should be considered attentively and used, because on the whole, this omnichannel is not the target itself. It's more of an instrument that would enable to involve clients in this or that ecosystem. And for any other company which involves clients, it's a potential profit. That's why, as we believe, this tendency should be developed. And today we have heard at the plenary session that we have seen quite a serious movement towards that on the regulator side. Can I make clear, more specific. After foreign vendors quit, what share of the Russian market has been taken by the Russian companies, providers? Looking at our current basis before Finapolis, we made an analysis that we had seen that acquire payments rise twice as much, and this is quite a substantial trend. And I'm talking about Evotor. The analysis we made, we will see quite promising in this area, in this direction. And now we're developing different types of acquire, not only with our colleagues from Sberbank, but from VTB and BP. And I think that this type will help clients to partially replace those customary services for those who are using Apple phones. And this area taking place in development. Anton, pay service. What pay services are you using? Which of them now are most used by the clients? We had customers who pay in cards, tips. Just we're collecting opinions online and all that, references on the client. What the feedback do you keep with the clients? Just requests tips, for example, Sber tips. If we talk about stimulating, they compete with each other. Those are technologies, procedures. We are very friendly with the Sber company, and we are removing net system. We are collecting requests, and what has appeared recently is the payment account division. This is my dish, this is my dish, and they were dividing 15 minutes with the waiters and the like it was practiced earlier. Right, in a restaurant, for example, in our restaurants. Now, all this done online. Every guest has its own account, separate account. And talk about restaurants, it is working. As an owner, the owner of the Starbucks company, as network, what solutions are you implementing? Same solutions, but the account should not be divided because all the payments are done at the cashier's desk. This is where biometrics can be implemented, by the way. It should accelerate because it's important there. If in a restaurant this process is longer, here in the Starbucks, any orders can be processed very quickly, and 9-hour shift implies that in the evening, especially in the evening time, implies that all the transactions should be done very quickly. And we preserved our green color as the main color, and we are a powerful cafeteria payment triumvirate now, together with Sberbank. Alan, open up. I wanted to say a few words about the open. And yesterday we saw a new strategy talking about that financial market. I like the phrase that we are stimulating, but we are calling colleagues on the colleagues to work, to interact, and its possible use of RPs might absolve some companies of a number of operations in the year 2024. What operations can we talk about, and how actively are you collaborating in terms of that? If we get back to the conception that was published, it's kind of an invitation for a talk, but it is important. It is very important that feedback with the market, who is going to be ready, who is not going to be ready. We understand on our side that we have divided the market actors into bigger, major ones. Of course, those are major systemic banks. Talking about the lending companies and organizations, how they're exchanging information. They can tell about themselves, and it's not an mass event. An event, it's done within one group. Some partnership programs implemented. Alpha Bank, for example, told today's panel that they have been actively using that. Okay, some other banks were representing that, and this is how these aspects occurred. more global approach on our market in order to have a bigger number of participants into this beneficial interchanges, one of the elements of the globalization, ongoing globalization. And that's why this is a dialogue with the market. As much ready they are, and the biggest players, when they follow certain conditions and rules. It's about protection of data, it's about confidentiality, it's about cyber security, it's about violation of those owners of those data. All this has been laid down into our conception. It's the way we as regulators see our future and going towards that future. Vladimir, you are an adept of expanding your technologies, your developments all over the world, worldwide. This is true. This is the essence of our payment system. Of any payment system should be equally accessible and equally standardized. The products, it's about consolidation of businesses, business opportunities that at the level of payment system might cost less for every participant. It's about IT of some reproduction of some resource intensive payment instruments and services. I'm talking about business opportunities for example, talking about the NSPK opportunities provided by the NSPK business halls. When the NSPK gathers demands from all the markets, all those who are holding those standards, those major organizations, they can achieve better prices and offer them as opportunity in this, plus this expansion on the principle of equal access and equidistance. Of course, this is one of the principles we are sticking, and this expansion on the principle of equidistance and equal access. These are the services, these are the investments that can be achieved at the level of every level. It's not about only a major actor, for example, as Sberbank. For smaller banks, it's not always, they are not always able to achieve that level. And this is the essence of any payment system. By expanding technological platforms, we are creating, we are sometimes accused that the competition has shifted into somehow another area. It has shifted into the competition between different payment systems. It has shifted into the competition between services, and our task here is enabled to maximally develop these services through providing those platforms on business opportunities and products on which we have been working today. Talk about the departure of international payment system. What does it mean for us? That we're doing something of our own, but simpler, more simple, cheaper and more simple? Or is it we'll try to make something better? Are there any market stimuli on the market? For me, it's good. It's always good. A simple product is always a very well selling product. Talking about the product, we for ourselves see that product as a target, as our objective. We shouldn't break from the reality by doing our own, something of our own. Tsarev today has said that those giants have left. We can do everything. If we compare the situation, there was Microsoft Oracle, there were some chances of some Russian startups to create something similar. Not many chances, I can assure you, because there are not only products, but there are systems of distribution and support that had established themselves. And this same can be said about the payment systems. If we compare it, we would be lagging behind one step back. Now we're doing very simple questions from the point of interface with the clients, and this is great because we don't have that necessity to reach for something. We are tracing. We are still participants of the PCI Council International Organization. have not been asked to leave them, and we carry on to work in some working groups, like it has been in last years. We are full-time participants, full-fledged participants. We're involved in establishing and creating some international technologies of international scale. We are, for example, offering different technologies, request-to-pay platforms, and many others. Everything is based on our developments, which are unique and technology intensive, and I believe that the time will come when we can back to the international cooperation, and all this will be compatible, and we won't have to think for a long time how to provide for this, how to secure for all this to get together. We are trying to do some simple things. They are most saleable, not without keeping in mind, by the way, the quality issue, not forgetting about quality. When we say qualitatively and fast and expensive, I think expensive is when we reach that position or that situation when we exchange money for time. Now the stimulus is when they get back, all of them. It's not about the payment systems, it's about any other areas concerning all those who decided to leave the Russian market. When they get back, they would be more aggressive. Now when we have such opportunities, we should create those products, new products. So you sound optimistic, saying about that they will try to get back. So now, Vladimir, you are doing for yourselves, you're doing some job for yourselves and for the other guys who have left. What is the strategy for the case when they get back? If they get back sometime, they should understand they should understand that they will have to try catching up on us in Russia, on the Russian market. I can tell you about the horizon when they can be expected to be back, as they consider. I know what they think. I tried rather than in Starbucks, I tried to work in the McDonald's. If Starbucks has left because there's a Kuwait franchising company, and McDonald's had a special condition, the reverse option for about 15 years when they quit. And we talked about let's have another time if we achieved that, and they said, okay, if we can be back within 15 years time. This is what they said to us when we talked to them about their possible return. Alan, what do you see as a regulator at the evolution? What help can be provided from your side? If some regulation, or we can let everyone go and let them develop as much as they can. We have been trying to be together with them and keep an active dialogue and seek those active zones that require our presence. This is non-stop continuous dialogue we keep, where we should be involved in resolving some tasks, and where we can give a free hand to the participants. Everywhere where the participants can't come to terms, can't agree, or are not ready to reach for example, to share the IFP. All our previous projects have occurred because they wanted very much to work on that market. No one was going to launch, to enter invade into those businesses. All our projects occurred when the market participants could not come to terms regarding the format, regarding the model. And I think that this is where we should be very cautious and careful. We shouldn't be late. We shouldn't be hasty. And we shouldn't do harm. Kirill, from your side, I've been asking about strategy of the Sberbank company and development. What can you do in this area of payment services today, tomorrow, and the day after tomorrow? Talking about simultaneous, accessible Technology, it's about developing QR, SBP technologies, biometrics. If some new ways of paying occur, we shall look at them, consider them, and we are examining different alternative methods and techniques, alternative ones. There are some funny ones, alternative ones, but we keep it secret now, confidential. The second thing is we are going to actively cooperate, which we have already discussed, and for the QR payment we are working together with our colleagues from Tinkoff and Sovcombank and Alpha banks, and I think there's a very good example of different collaborations between companies, between banks, because when we started talking about the open up, we came to the conclusion that further on we would see new formats of cooperation between the participants. We mentioned the payment, the tips system service. There are no coins in the woods together with the Alpha Bank, for example. There's Sberbank, Yandex.Pay. Another important element is the state and the state services. It's a question of getting some services transferred to their sphere, and it's very important now to have the client have a choice of services, and clients themselves, and physical individuals and legal entities, because we're connecting, in fact, the market of individuals and legal entities. Our task is to provide the most efficient and convenient way of payment to all of them. Now we see another area, new area in Russia. So BNBL services have been launched. For example, Clarin and so on. Everything was good with the credit cards and post-credit cards, but still, what we see is that how services are developing together. With these services are developing together with acquiring as an additional service and as a service of sales. This is the set of services that is going to exist around the payment systems and services. What particular services an individual and legal entity is going to be given in addition, the banks, companies that are provided with cash equipment, the payment systems. It's going to be a big picture, a big number of services and solutions, and we are likely to come to segmentation, fragmentation, when different clients in different life situations can be given different services. For example, some way he or she can pay with a card, with a telephone, or on the internet, for example, or payment, online payment. So an online payment. We should understand that there's going to be a number of payments and different systems, methods, techniques of payment. And our target is, as a universal bank, to work with all the services, because if someone likes one service and someone else is liking another service, we're going to develop all of them. Fintech market, your strategy, please. The payment strategy shortly can be expressed in such a way is that we are working with all the major key players, host to host, on the host to host basis. We want that integration to develop further, because we wanted to have it better than what exists on the market, more efficient. For example, when the Wildberries platform after authorization, it's another type of authorization than on our platform, and the final wake and the final target is some kind of service that is going to be similar to the open up one, rather from acquiring, normal acquiring, and up to the open up. We want to cover all these services, all these steps. Of course, we keep talking to all the market, collaborating with all the market. We want to have that service develop soon. Instead of sum up, I'd like to request just a couple of phrases talking about the name of today's session: global integration. Today, is it a myth or reality? And before we started this session, in behind the scenes, we were making jokes about global. Is it part of Moscow, or whole Moscow is global, is getting global? And you can express your understanding of what global means for you. Kirill, you were correct. that we're going to talk about the definitions of being global, what global is. If we talk about Russia, I think it's not a myth. It's an integration between the payment system, between banks, and between the biggest brands, trade points and networks. And roughly speaking, it's going to be a big multitude of different services combined. And we will find, and we do find, different formats of cooperation, like it was 5 years ago when we were ready to discuss the launching services between different applications. Now we have been doing that, and we have been actively working on that, Elvira. In fact, this is not a myth, it's a reality. The reality, it's a necessity. This is what the market should work towards and should do. This is what necessary for clients, for the companies. Talking about global, using the word global, what do you mean by that? Global is a country, then we can go abroad and show our experience to others. This is what global means for me. Major companies don't like when they, in some locality, they get dictated with some conditions. If it's just a national company that is represented in more than one country, this company tries to achieve that unification of all the rules it's been following, and globalism is perceived as payments working in all the countries where we're present on par equally. In all those countries where present, for example, if the rules are the same, similar. This is what the target for globalization can reach. Plus Uzbekistan, Russia, and plus Uzbekistan, right? This is globalization. Where you expanded the borders, Moscow, part of Moscow, Russia, Uzbekistan, perhaps, okay? We have expanded these boundaries. Talking about and answering your question about globalization. It's a myth or reality? No, we were not joking when we were talking about QR. We should understand where these boundaries are. And talking about the penetration of services and companies through each other and to each other. If it's a win-to-win to everyone, of course, this is when we can define those borders, determine those borders, geographical borders. This is what we need, this type of globalization we need. Vladimir, for me this global integration is, I understood this is synonymous to the platform we call the Omnichannel platform. In the situation when there is a lot of products, different products, be it biometric and QR ones, it's great, but at the same time on the side of clients, this is where this variety begins of compatibility, and we have some ideas how to just to have everyone coming up to the cashier's desk to pay, to carry out that payment, how to form that layer of customers, that platform. We have this idea, and we called it the Omnichannel platform that should enable many clients to grow from point of to develop, to make progress from point of new platforms, from point of efficiency, in easiness and user friendliness. That is important for trade companies, for clients, and they've gotten accustomed to, for example, to touch your phone, and this is how you do the purchase, your shopping. This is global integration. How global integration? For me, technological tasks. We're setting aim for peace all over the world, worldwide. It's not empty words. I keep saying that sometime later, 5 years' time, this period will be over, the period of isolation and standoff, and we will understand that we would find ourselves in that situation. China found themselves about 10 or 15 years ago, when they had work with the Chinese tourists. You had to work with the pay Chinese payment system. Now it's become one of those payment systems that have been used worldwide. Now, when we understand that those providers of services want to work with the Russian clients, they would have to use the Russian payment systems. Natasha, and I will try to answer this question as a regulatory body. Let's see the definition. What globalization is. Globalization is an avoidable event, a phenomenon of humanity which is in the world exchanging products, services, for information, cultural values, and it's getting more interconnected. It didn't occur yesterday. It's not occurring now. It's the tendency, economic development, of human development that has always been developing, and I hope that globalization, talking about the events, ongoing events, globalization does not change its essence as a phenomenon. And those minor changes, those having all those participants change somehow the forms of interchange or forms of change, but the change itself does not change. Globalization as a phenomenon is not changing because it's globalization. Thank you so much, and thanks to all the speakers, and thank you all for all those who have attended this plenary session.